Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our webinar, Inhabiting the Body You Love and Loving the Body You Inhabit, with our very own Dr. Mary Attwood. I'm Riley O'Neill, Patient Care Coordinator and Marketing Manager here at Heart of Wellness. Heart of Wellness is an interdisciplinary clinic located in Tumwater, Washington. We have 7 naturopathic physicians and a variety of specialty clinicians, including acupuncture, functional medicine, massage therapy, nutrition, and physical therapy. We are proud to welcome Mary to share her knowledge with you today. Following the presentation, and if time permits, Mary will answer any questions. Although she can't go into specifics, she will do her best to answer questions to the best of her ability. I do ask that everybody just keep themselves muted, and Mary, you can take it away. I think you have yourself muted though.
There we are. Thank you, Riley. Hi, everybody. Welcome. So let me share my screen here. I have just started here at Heart of Wellness, and I can see some of my friends and folks from Portland on here. Recently moved here from Portland. Hold on, let's see how I can do this one. And we'll go into this. Here we go. So I am someone who inhabits a bigger body, and this topic is really personal as well as prescient. Like, we're in a really important time when we're thinking about how we inhabit our bodies, when we think about how we interact with other people, and the thoughts or words that we make about our own bodies or about other people's bodies, right? I have tiny humans at home, so we're constantly talking about watching our words, and trying to, I guess, at home to model what it means to love my body for my children so that they can grow up in their bodies without any shame or without any thoughts of their body being somewhat, less than or not enough. So that's me. Hi, nice to meet you. I should just also say that the only affiliations I have besides here at Heart of Wellness is I do have a tiny little monthly practice back in Portland, and a license in Oregon. And then I also have a little online store that's not affiliated here. And before we dive in too much further, and this is a picture from the other side of my computer is actually this picture right here of the land here in Tumwater. And I'd like to just take a moment to acknowledge the peoples whose ancestral homeland this is. And I'm so sorry that these pronunciations are not perfect because I'm learning. But that would be the peoples of the Nisqually, the Squaxin, and the Chehalis people since time immemorial. So I'd just like to take a moment to recognize that the building that we're in here at Heart of Wellness is really special. It's right here by the Tumwater Falls. And I will admit that I was definitely lured here in a way by the beauty of the space and the beauty of the land here. I'd also like to just take a moment to kind of invoke and intend together that this topic is really personal and loaded for a lot of us, especially those of us who inhabit bigger bodies. If you're a bigger bodied or fat person on this call, then you could probably co-teach this webinar with me, because we don't have to be told that bias and stigma exist. We feel it every day. We've grew up with it. And if you're a healthcare provider or a practitioner or an ally, somebody who maybe hasn't experienced weight stigma, but just wants to do the right thing, like, you are also welcome here. And it's important that you're here for today's conversation. So I welcome all of you, and I'm grateful for the mic here for the time. Just some broad topics here. I'm just going to talk a little bit about why the BMI is just really an outdated and unfortunate health metric, to say the least. And then we're going to talk about removing barriers to health or removing barriers to inhabiting the body or being fully present in the body. And then I'll bring on some resources, some ways that we can kind of invoke resilience. And then at the very end of the talk, we'll have a few slides that are kind of dedicated to providers and also fat people who want to access good healthcare, what to look for when you're trying to find a good provider, and then ways that providers can make their spaces welcoming and at the very least, less harmful. So diving in, you maybe know that the BMI is something that we look at. And it is a health metric that was developed by this person, again, whose name I am not going to pronounce correctly, but Adolf Quetelet, a Belgian statistician. And he was studying Scottish and French, mostly males at the time in the 1800s. And was kind of emphasizing this preferred shape or preferred size. And he came up with this metric that was literally designed by and for white Europeans in the 1800s. His work influenced a person named Francis Galton, who is the founder of eugenics. And if you don't know what eugenics is, it's basically a historical way that white medical and other people have chosen to have kind of a white standard or a white supremacy standard for how the body should be or look. So the BMI roots are sadly very racist and are sadly very not focused on either female bodies or bodies of color. We know about it today and we're using it in science today, mostly because of a man named Ansel Keys. And what he did in the 70s is he did this study, right? It was called the 7-Country Study of Heart Disease. And the way he broke up the group participants was through this metric that he somehow found from, I guess, Quetelet's work. And he was never really able to prove, even when he was using it in the study, that adiposity, or an adipose is the medical term for fat, that adiposity and BMI were somehow even superior predictors of heart disease, as we kind of think of it today, as has been told to us. But he wasn't even really able to prove that that was true. He was just able to find a correlation in some groups. He also is notable for creating the formula that we use when we're looking at lower density cholesterol, and was very integral in the 80s and 90s for trying to debunk the connection between sugar and cholesterol. I don't know if you remember the 90s when it was like no fat, low fat. Potato chips are fine because they're fat free or whatever, So, he kind of was one of those people that was promoting that idea. We now know that sugar has a much bigger role in things like cholesterol and things like driving adiposity potentially in some bodies. But again, he's kind of the one that took the BMI to modern day use as a health metric. So in the 80s and 90s, the National Institute of Health started using this as a metric. And what it's turned into really is a way to try and quantify, a metric for who is at risk of developing a disease. And sadly, it's not really even been, I don't even know how to say this. There's a little bit of correlation between certain disease processes and body size for sure. But what we're discovering with some of the weight loss programs of the 90s, like Weight Watchers and all these things, is that there are actually no weight loss programs that after 5 years have a significant reduction in body weight after 5 years. So you'll lose weight initially, maybe on a diet or exercise program, but inevitably gain it back, whether or not you have stopped doing the learned lifestyle and dietary changes. So in short, the BMI, it really was not formulated for all bodies. here's the formula, right? It's, here it is. It's weight in kilograms divided by meters squared. Okay. And so that doesn't take into account the fact that muscle weighs more than fat, the fact that female bodies inevitably have more adipose tissue than male bodies, and that's across, cultural spectra. And what it's turned into really is a metrics to use for weight discrimination. And it is used now today in medicine as a way to deny you health benefits, to quantify your health insurance premiums, or to deny you important surgeries or procedures. You need a knee replacement, but you're told you need to diet and lose weight, but you can't get the knee replacement you need in order to do the exercise you're told that will help you to lose the weight. And so there are a lot of people who are trying to do a couple of things at once now, I would say. We're not trying to say that there aren't ways to always improve our health. What I would say that fat activists and those of us who are trying to promote a health at every size approach to healthcare is that we are trying to help debunk the idea that this is the most important health metric. And I'll also just say, with kind of a Queenie mom finger in the air, other people's weight is none of your business, right? Other people's body sizes are just none of my business. And even if it is a conversation between you and your doctor, hopefully your doctor is being unharmful about how they approach this topic with you. And sadly, that's usually not the case, right? We're really having to reframe how we talk about it. We're really having to reframe, I would say too, what exactly our health goals are for patients, right? So when people come into my office and they're just I just need to lose weight, I just sort of stop them right there and sweetly, I'm like, okay, I may not be the doctor for you if that's your big goal, because my goal isn't for you to lose weight necessarily. My goal is for you to feel more like yourself. My goal is for you to have a reduction in the complaints that you're coming in with, whether it's pain or say there's an actual condition you have, like you're pre-diabetic or you have high cholesterol. And there are some diet and lifestyle, approaches we want to take. Those are the things that I'm here and I'm most invested in, is that your symptoms improve and your sense of well-being improves. Your sense of embodiment is promoted by your healthcare providers. So, and again, I know that this topic is sensitive. It turns out that on our social media, ads, I think we may have had somebody kind of come in and be like, everyone knows being overweight is unhealthy. And it's well, actually, this talk is to help you recognize that that's not true. We've just sort of been programmed to believe that weight and health are in some kind of dynamic relationship where being in a bigger weight or a bigger body somehow directly means that you are unhealthy in some way. And so again, with my Queenie finger, I'm it's just not our business, right? Our family members, our friends, the strangers on the street, their body size is not our business. And if anything, your fat friends and your fat colleagues would appreciate it if you wouldn't make a comment about it. So that's my inner kind of moment about that. I have a couple of soapboxes here. So for those of us who have dealt with weight stigma or bias, a lot of the times folks who inhabit a bigger body, they have trauma from just the experience of being a bigger person. And they have barriers that prevent them from potentially either changing the size of their body, if that's the desired, outcome, or access to doing it, right? So the step A, really is removing the barrier, removing whatever it is that's preventing you from achieving a health goal or feeling better, right? And things also removing a barrier from what keeps us from being in our bodies, right? So our bodies, when we've experienced trauma or stress or oppression or grief, right, pain, we can dissociate. We cannot be fully present mentally in the actual physical body. So it's really important that, when we're as providers interacting with folks, we check in about their trauma history. We check in about their access to resources, right? Like, I shouldn't tell you to eat organic foods if you can't afford them or you can't access them. So really trying to help people remove those barriers internally. And I'll get to a few resources here too about how to do that, but thinking too about what happens when a body occupies more than one marginalized space. So if you're a person of color and you're fat, or if you're a trans person of color and you're fat, you've kind of been told from the beginning of your life that you're not quite the standard that's acceptable or allowed. So you might just take a moment, if you're someone who inhabits a bigger body, and just, have a moment of like, when did I first learn fat was bad? When did I first learn I was fat, right? For many of us, it's elementary school, right? For many of us, it's this very early on imprinting that there's something wrong with my body because it is bigger, or I'm not able to access clothing that fits me appropriately for my sports team that I'm on, because, fat athletes exist. We're just not always supported in things like, children's athletic wear, for example. And so again, the step A here is trying to remove those barriers, getting access to the things that we need to heal these barriers of embodiment. Step A, remove the block. Step B is do all the things, right? Like, it isn't just one pill, right? Like, take this pill and you'll lose weight. Do this workout and you'll lose weight, go to therapy. And it's like, maybe your body won't lose weight. Maybe that is something that we have to just come to grips with, that our body has a particular set weight point. And it may or may not be something that you're capable of doing. There's a lot of evidence these days that that bodies have kind of a set point, and whether or not you're going to go up or down, it'll come back to this kind of homeostatic spot potentially. But when I talk about doing all the things, first of all, it means accessibility and resources, right? Like having the resources to access a healthcare provider, a mental health care provider, doing the mental health care you need for trauma, building resilience, right? Doing the emotional health care to heal your relationship with your body, or to heal your relationship. I hear, and I'll just let you know too, I too struggle with this. This is a journey, right? We're on a journey together to dismantle our internal weight bias. So, when we think of what's flattering, from the moment you get up and you put on clothing, really trying to be kind and gentle with yourself. So some of that emotional healthcare piece are things like mindful self-compassion, really moving in a direction where you're paying attention to the words and thoughts that are existing within yourself about your body, your words and your thoughts that are existing outside of you about other people's bodies, and starting to really check yourself, starting to really check, am I being kind? Right? Like, am I being biased right now? Just really trying to check in. And it's not just with weight, right? Like, I think we're having a global conversation about checking in about these things on other types of marginalization, right? I would say here in the Pacific Northwest, we're really having to check ourselves about our judgments about poverty, our judgments about drug use, right? There's some things going on here that are really hard to talk about. So in the context of building access to care for people in bigger bodies, it's not just a one-stop-fits-all approach. It's actually doing the physical healthcare that you need, addressing a food sensitivity, addressing an eating disorder, right? Addressing a health condition such as maybe diabetes or high blood pressure or high cholesterol, and recognizing that diet and lifestyle approaches are so important, but they may not be the curative thing, right? And so accessing the medicine you need from all these different arenas of your life to try and inhabit your body and love your body more, and doing what you can, again, to like address things like pain, illness, the things that kind of keep us outside our body. And so that leads us to like a spiritual approach too, like finding a practice, finding a meditation, finding a walking meditation, being in nature, the things that bring you back to who you are, the things that bring you back to embodying more resilience. So Health at Every Size, it's, there's Lindo Bacon is the author of the book Health at Every Size, but they didn't coin the term. And really the idea with this model here is weight inclusivity, right? Accepting just the fact that bodies exist in different shapes and sizes, and that a specific weight is not necessarily ideal. Enhancing health for people, right? So improving and equalizing access to services. As we know, a lot of people are actually denied services based on their weight, in my opinion, often inappropriately. And bringing respectful care into the treatment room, looking at you, doctors, right? Really doing what we can as providers to meet people where they are and try to check our bias, try to eradicate our bias when we can, and try to do the least harm in that treatment visit. And then the idea too that we're eating for well-being and satiety, right? Addressing disordered eating practices, addressing the trauma that maybe has created disordered eating for you. And then life-enhancing movement. I feel like the word exercise gets a really bad rap, right? Because we're like diet and exercise. It's like, well, it doesn't actually have to be that formal. It's just about bringing in a movement that you love, something that's nurturing. And of course, removing the barrier you have. Like, it's really inappropriate to tell somebody with a super limiting physical health condition, something like cerebral palsy or like fibromyalgia, that all they need to do is move and it will be better. It's like sometimes people actually can't move. So we have to meet them where they are with their abilities and see what we can do to help, again, kind of encourage those lifestyle changes when appropriate and when capable. So I love these folks in Portland, Dana Sturdivant and Hillary Canavy. They're really trying to do good service in the world. And they have developed a program called Body Trust. And it's formerly known as Be Nourished. And they have a new book out that I highly recommend. If you're a bigger bodied person and you're trying to dismantle a history of disordered eating, or you're trying to dismantle your own weight stigma, your own bias, their work is just really bar none. They have online groups for patients. They have online trainings for providers. And a lot of my content for today is inspired by a lot of their deep research. They also have a really lovely TED Talk. And I'll just say that I know that these are hard ideas to come to. But when you start seeing it, it's kind of like when you start seeing privilege and things, it's like you can't unsee it. So I just encourage you to, dive a little deeper into this subject if we're sparking something for you, that this is a great place to go. And then again, for providers, like just putting that care back in healthcare, having accessible treatment rooms and seating. I will tell you right now, I can do a better job of this myself. Having accessible gowns and exam tables, having drapes that aren't just like tiny little kerchiefs, for bigger bodies. And again, really working to improve the accessibility to the services, surgeries, procedures that people need, regardless of their size. Options around gathering weight and BMI metrics. I can't tell you how many medical charts I encounter with morbid obesity as a ICD-10 code. And I will just let you know, I will never use an obesity code ever, because I don't think it's appropriate. I think it's harmful to the person if they read it. And I don't consider it a health metric that is important enough to put as the most problematic problem the person is facing. And yes, there is a tone there. And then finding a body positive, health at every size healthcare provider. I'm not going to come onto this webinar and tell you that I am a 100% unharmful healthcare provider for fat people. I'll just say I'm trying not to be harmful. I'll just say I'm trying to do my part to unravel and dismantle my own weight stigma, my own weight bias, and to hold a safer space for people who've experienced it. And then this last slide is, there's this whole like paradigm approach to weight inclusivity as opposed to what was formerly called a weight normative approach to healthcare. And so this is just like telling doctors, like, first, do no harm, right? Like, be really sensitive about how we talk about weight in the treatment room, recognizing that all bodies come in natural shapes and sizes, and trying to maintain that holistic focus, right? I'm looking at health metrics, right? Like if you're pre-diabetic, let's talk about sugar intake, for example, but let's not necessarily introduce a restrictive diet for someone who has a history of disordered eating, right? And if we do, let's talk about that. That's what we're doing and how to do that in a kind and gentle way. I know we just have a couple more minutes, so I just wanted, I'll leave this little ad here for a class that Laura Woodworth and I are teaching in January. But I just want to read this little poem from Sonia Renee Taylor's book called The Body is Not an Apology. And it's called My Mother's Belly. The bread of her waist a loaf I would knead with 8-year-old palms, sweaty from play. My brother and I marveled at the ridges and grooves, how they would summit at her navel, and how her belly looked like a walnut, how we were once seeds that resided inside. We giggled, my brother and I, when she would recline on the couch, lift her shirt, let her belly spread like cake batter in a pan. It was as much a treat as licking the sweet from electric mixers on birthdays. The undulating of my mother's belly was not a shame she hid from her children. She knew we came from this. Her belly was a gift we kept passing between us. It was both hers, of her body, and ours for having made it new, different. Her belly was an altar of flesh, built in remembrance of us by us. And what remains of my mother's belly resides in a container of ashes I keep in a closet. Every once and again, I open the box, sift through the fine crystals with palms that were once 8. Feel the grooves and ridges that do not summit now, but rill through fingers, granules so much more salt than sweet today. And yet still I marvel at her once body. Even in this form, I say, I came from this. We just get this one flesh suit, right? In this lifetime, this one flesh suit. And working to dismantle any shame you have about your belly or the part of your body that is not your favorite is a lifelong journey. So I'm just going to close by encouraging us to all befriend those ripples and beautiful parts of us that may not feel acceptable at times. And then I'm going to back up to this one other quote I had. And I just think that, you know, as we endeavor to be more consciously in our bodies, it's so important that we're kind to each other as we do this on this journey together. So here I am with you on this journey. I welcome any quick questions you might have. I know we're probably running over on time. That's also part of my story, working on time management. Let's see. And I actually don't know how to moderate this. Riley, do you know how to moderate this?
Yes. You actually have you have until 1 o'clock.
Oh, I thought it was just a 30-minute.
Well, if you want to, you are more than welcome to, if anybody has any questions, you guys can place them in the chat, and you can answer
Or
them
raise
that
a
way,
hand.
or however you want to do it.
Okay, maybe I can stop share. We can see each other better. How do we do that?
Does anybody have any questions for Mary?
Or comments or thoughts? So in January, Laura Woodworth and I, her little face is right next to mine on my screen, we'll be teaching a class intentionally for folks with bigger bodies, and look out for more info from that, from our Heart of Wellness marketing and emails and things. And you can reach out always to info@heartofwellness.org. If you're like, ooh, I really want to be in that class, we're able to bill your insurance, I believe, for that class. We're still kind of figuring out the exact metrics on it, but it'll be a monthly class. And we're going to just hold a safer space to talk about other health metrics besides BMI. Did you want to say anything, Laura? Oh, yeah. And that also Kathy Visser is another one of Laura's colleagues who is a big health at every size body inclusivity person, another practitioner here in Olympia. And she does really good work. Oh, and she's here. Hi, Kathy. Nice to meet you. Or they're here.
That was really nice. Laura, you did that. You mentioned my name, didn't you? But Laura and I are good buddies, colleagues, and advocate for body liberation for people. So that was a wonderful talk. I'm so glad you're in town, Mary. You're going to make me cry. It's so awesome.
I have a couple people on here that know this about me, but I just cry at the drop of a hat. I have tissues in my office for me. Yeah, because it's important to just be who we are, feel what we feel, right? And be transparent about it.
And I love the Body Trust book. Yeah, I have a support group that I do monthly, and we're going to delve into that book next year, starting in January. So,
oh, I love it. I love that. Well, I'll probably reach out to you. I'm like, maybe I could be.
We should know each other. Yeah,
we should. And I'll just give another shout out for this Body is Not an Apology book by Sonia Renee Taylor too, because it's just glorious. And she has a workbook too that I think is really fabulous for just, again, the body liberation movement. So, well, thank you all for being here. I so appreciate your presence. I so appreciate your attention. And just taking this forward, as practitioners, as people in the world trying to do less harm and be a little more kind. I think we could all use a little more kindness these days. So thank you. Riley, do you want to close us out?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. And like Mary said, if actually, if you guys want to schedule an appointment with Mary or have to go into anything further, you are more than welcome to. You can call our front desk. You can call our front desk or online schedule even. You can find all of that information at heartofwellness.org.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Much love. I hope you have a lovely rest of your week and a happy Thanksgiving. Take care.